You're listening to the Scaling Culture podcast, where we sit down with thought leaders who share their experiences building incredible workplace cultures. Our guest today is Stephen Pierce, Deputy Managing Director and Chief HR Officer of Hitachi Europe. He has led HR in international businesses for more than 30 years. He's been recognized publicly for business leadership, including being appointed a Companion of the Chartered Management Institute and being voted one of UK's most influential HR leaders for a number of years. Stephen is a board director of Hitachi Europe and a member of the executive committee. He's also chair of the Hitachi European Diversity and Inclusion Council. He is an advisor to several HR networking organizations and a regular speaker at conferences and a coach and mentor. In this episode of Scaling Culture, Ron and Stephen discuss Hitachi's organizational culture with 350,000 leaders globally and the changes they went through during the pandemic. How does the Japanese heritage impact culture at work? Digitization, virtual workplaces, and a new way of working, and how HR loves rules and when you need to throw out the rule book.
Welcome to another episode of the Scaling Culture podcast. I'm your host, Ron Lovett, and today, all the way from the UK, we've got Stephen Pierce, Deputy Managing Director and Human Resource Officer at Hitachi Europe. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ron.
I'm excited to dive into some conversation with you because, I've been a Hitachi fan for a long time. I think did Hitachi used to make like VHSs way back in the day?
That's right. Yeah, everybody says I once had a Hitachi TV or CD player or whatever. Yeah. That's right.
And so there's a lot of history with me in the brand, and I think with a lot of people in the brand. And so I'm just, it's been around for how many years? How long has Hitachi been around?
So Hitachi was founded in 1910 in a mine in Japan. So it started in a very small scale. The first product was a 5-horsepower motor, and now it's one of the world's biggest, most successful companies. So it's a truly astonishing story of success and growth and change. And culture is all part of that, of course.
Well, I'm excited to dive into the culture, but before we do that, we've done a formal overview of your background, but let's dive in a little more. So, Stephen, I know you had mentioned to me you were one of the lucky ones who got in HR early and found your kind of purpose and passion. But tell us more, high level. Bring us through the ride of Stephen Pierce.
Sure. No, thanks, Ron. So, yeah, I left university thinking, what do I do with my life? As everybody kind of does at that point, and I was lucky enough to talk to some friends who said what HR entails. I thought that sounds great. And I worked in various businesses kind of as a student. So it found my purpose, really, my direction, working on that connection between people and business, which I've done through different organizations through the last 30 or more years. They've been in different sectors, but they've all had sort of an industrial engineering kind of focus. And over the last 25 years that have been international. So I think once you work internationally and you focus on the world beyond your own country, it just gives you that broader view and you never want to go back to the way you were before. So I joined Hitachi in 2008 and through that time, I've done various roles with different responsibilities. Right now, I'm the Deputy MD, so supporting a Japanese colleague who leads Hitachi Europe, but also Chief HR Officer for Hitachi Europe too. So truly dynamic company, which has changed a lot in my time there that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Absolutely. And, I'm fascinated and I love that you said, once you went global, I'll call it with some global experience, you didn't want to go back. Right. And I feel like when you say that, you're talking about the changes that you've made, as well as just the complexity on that and really enjoying it. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's the diversity of opinion and views you get, and you realize just how different the world is, and actually how much you can learn from other people, and how connecting people globally gives you a much better outcome. As well as you say that the complexity is just is so interesting and so enjoyable to work through, because we have so much that unites us, and I found that kind of traveling around. That as people, we have so much that connects us. We often talk about other countries and their differences, but actually focusing on what's the same is in one sense even more rewarding, because as people we have the same issues, we want to achieve many of the same things, we want to do the right thing, the best things for our families, we want to be good employees, good friends, we want to make sure that we can provide for those around us. The challenges at work and so on are pretty similar, and so as people globally we have so much that unites us, as well as of course some cultural differences and differences in the places that we live.
I talk about a mentor and friend of mine, a gentleman by the name of John Risley, very successful international entrepreneur. And when I go and talk to him about challenges I'm having, I always say, like, he sees 5 moves ahead, because he's done international business. He's got all the things that you're talking about. He's understood things from a very different perspective and seen how things work globally versus just in our microeconomy. So I've always been inspired by that. And with my real estate company, we actually just got back from a trade mission to Nigeria, where we're looking at expanding there. And I get really excited about international business, because I couldn't agree more. Even doing business across the country of Canada gives you very different people, very different perspectives. What other than, Stephen, having, diverse thought, diverse point of view, what else was one thing that, what did your belief change? What was an aha moment as you went to the international stage of HR? What was the big, like, wow, I had no idea?
I think it's just how differently we come at the same questions. You talk in our own lives about common sense. Well, that's maybe what we share with those immediately around us, but actually others can come at questions quite differently, and what's important to them might be quite different from what's important to us. And recognizing actually that there's more than one way to achieve the outcome you're looking for, and actually what you want to achieve may not be exactly aligned with somebody else, because they're starting from a different place. Their background, their situation is different, and that kind of where we are today shapes where we want to go to next, and we can't necessarily assume everybody's where we are. So it's that recognition, really. It's, in a sense, it brings you a sense of humility, because you realize that actually there's so much you don't know, and you've got so much to learn, because suddenly your scope for learning goes from beyond where you are to the huge diversity and the number of opportunities and people you can connect with around the world, rather than just closer to home.
And and I want to dig into the foundation of the culture, but just as we're here, I'm curious. When I look at one of the challenges in building a high performing culture, I think of the human element, and what I mean by that is that you have to treat everybody well. Not you have to, but your communication style changes as you talk to people. Well, that at your level gets more complex again, right? It gets way more complex, because now you have these different cultures coming together, that there's this ingrained culture or ingrained way to communicate based on their culture or belief systems. How do you get through that? I mean, when you deal with folks from around the world, you must have to really get onboarded to their culture and understand it before you go in and start communicating and get it all wrong, because that's how we communicate in North America. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be with all the people we work with in different places, just an acceptance that we don't all do things the same way. And I mean, I give an example. When I joined Hitachi in 2008, I went to Japan for the first time, which is an amazing country. It's extraordinary. I've been there more than 30 times now. And every time it's just, it's great to learn more and understand more. But of course, the way that business is conducted there, it can be different. And the way that relationships are developed can be a little different. And it's just, when I went there, I realized that, but also just how gracious everybody was, and accepting that I didn't get it from the beginning, because that wasn't my background. And that sort of understanding and graciousness with each other, to say, actually, okay, you're different from me, but it doesn't mean that you're any better, worse, or you're not wrong, or whatever. It's just accepting those differences, to recognize that actually what unites us, as I mentioned earlier, is stronger than what separates us. But actually, the fact that you're different doesn't make you wrong. And
Absolutely.
And the fact that I was accepted for my, the fact that I was a Brit going into Japan, but actually the huge organization we have there, The people I met have been fantastic, and I've got some good friends in Japan, and we catch up when we meet up. And it doesn't matter where you come from; it's who you are and how you behave and how you connect with people that makes the difference.
How does Hitachi balance centralization versus decentralization? Because when you're that diverse into different countries, et cetera, you would think that it would be tough to be centralized and say, from a centralized environment, here's what you're going to do because that's what Hitachi does. Is there a balance, and what is the right balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real key question, and it's a question I think that all big organizations ask themselves all the time, because on the one hand, you want to be centralized in key areas. At the same time, you recognize that people need freedom to make decisions and to do the right thing for their business. And Hitachi is such a diverse organization, in such a range of sectors, from sort of energy to mobility, trains, automotive systems, digital systems and services. They're in different sectors with different customers, with different requirements, with different strategies. So you've got to give people the freedom to run their business and own their business. So you then say, okay, what should be in common? And I think there are some key HR processes that you need to share about talent and how you develop talent and how you share talent in the organization. But I think the fundamentals that we all need to share come back to our vision, our values, our mission. Because fundamentally, we can do things differently depending on where we work, what part of the company we work in. But that's the vision, the values are who we are, and we need to define that centrally. We need to agree that centrally. And in Hitachi, because it's 112 years old, those have been long-standing to say, actually, this is how we're going to behave. This is how we're going to do business. Because people might meet somebody from Hitachi from a different country or a different division, but fundamentally, they should be adhering to the same values, because that's about who we are, not what we are.
I like that. I think, in my business, and I always think, look, we should be centralizing the support systems, process, guidance, and sometimes check and balance. But other than that, give the menu to the local management, to local individuals to make their own decision. Let's get out of the way, but at least guide them to make those decisions easier. That's what we've tried to find the balance. And then I think of like supplies. We were having this debate not too long ago. So in my real estate company today, Vita, should we be buying hardwood floors in bulk from Asia and import them? And we know we've got the same floor and we've got continuity. And then we kind of had two thoughts. One was, I don't know if our customer cares. I don't know if you and I are living in the same, building, and my flooring is light brown and yours is darker brown, and I go over for a cup of tea, I don't think I give a darn. I just don't think it's important. So that was one. We overthought it and didn't talk to the customer. Two was, if we did that, I was afraid of, if we centralized to that extent, I was afraid that we would then become an asset manager of new assets. We now need to warehouse these things and truck them around, and we would lose the flexibility of supporting the local business. If our local manager in the area knew that Sarah at the hardware store, they had a relationship, and there was a sale of a product on Friday, they could just go scoop that up and take it. It was probably even going to be cheaper than what we were getting from China, because it was the Friday get rid of it sale. What are your thoughts? Are we thinking about it properly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to find the opportunities where it makes sense to share around, particularly where you get cost efficiency from doing that, and some elements of standardization where it makes sense to do it. I mean, another great example is IT systems. If you don't have the same platforms, you can't communicate as easily.
Right.
We've been implementing the same HR platform over the last 7 or 8 years to try to standardize that, so that you have all your people data in one place and it's in the same format and it can be shared and communicated easily. So kind of there are certain areas. Co-location's another one. Why have 2 or 3 offices in the same city when you could be in the same office? Because you get cost efficiency, but also you get that benefit of people being in the same place and connecting, and that helps you drive innovation, because you have people chatting at the coffee machine, sharing information. You think, hey, that's a great idea, I never thought of that. And you don't do that if you're sitting a mile away, the other side of the city centre or whatever. So I think opportunistically, it's good to connect people in that way and find opportunities to share. Same with some back office services, beyond IT. And again, we try and do elements of that. We are doing elements of that, but it isn't centralized in the sense that it's a diktat from HQ to say you must do that. We try to find the right ways to do it, to get the businesses to buy in, to recognize the value of connecting together, working together, as well as delivering on their own particular strategy for their own particular sector.
Got it. Let's go back to, I'm curious about, so it's 100 plus years old, 110 years old?
112, yeah.
112. Give me the original story. Founded from a Japanese family, or what was the original starting point?
The starting point was a guy called Mr. Odera, who worked in a mine in Hitachi City in Japan.
Oh, and, Hitachi's a city. I didn't know it was a city.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely, yeah. And he was working in a mine, and he sort of had that light bulb moment where he said, why do we import so much of our technology? And he set up a business. I mentioned earlier that the first product was a 5-horsepower motor. And then there was a recognition that kind of there's more we could do, and gradually that build up over time to become a much bigger Japanese company, and then moving globally over the following 100 years or whatever. So yeah, it started from very modest beginnings, but interestingly, back to the culture piece really, and the vision and values. The vision and the mission at that time were very similar to today, which was that Hitachi wants to contribute to society through innovation. Fundamentally, that's what it's about. To say, actually, the world changes, and we need to keep innovating to ensure that we can help society, to contribute to society. It's kind of it's doing good. It's about trying to do the right thing and doing good. Right. And then the values that kind of went with that, the three values are, again, the same 100 years later, which are, I'll give you kind of the English translation. I couldn't pronounce the Japanese, but that harmony is the first one, which is about showing respect to all those around us, whether they're our colleagues or suppliers, our clients, customers, other stakeholders, and through showing respect to earn respect, really. And in doing that, listening to other people's views, recognizing that we don't have all the answers ourselves, and that gives us a stronger team by doing it. The second is called sincerity, which perhaps is slightly different from the way we might understand it in English. But it's really about integrity in everything we do, because our reputation is really founded on how we do business and how we seem to do business. And there's a great line in what's on the website, what people read about this, which is that right and wrong is more important than profit and loss. And I love that, because it says that we should always do the right thing. And of course, for reputation, we all know that reputations take years to build and moments to lose because of doing the wrong thing. So the second is sincerity, and the third is pioneering spirit, which I think makes a lot of sense in English. It's about innovation. It's always saying finding new approaches to entering new sectors, finding ways to do good by innovation. And that's always been a key part of, I guess, what attracts people to Hitachi, as well as what keeps people in the organization, keeps us all engaged and focused.
So two things. One, we just upgraded our values 3 months ago. We constantly do that. If someone exhibits behavior that really wasn't captured in our values and they left, we'll update our values, or vice versa. Someone exhibits incredible behavior and we didn't capture it, we want to screen for that and onboard to it and lean into it, we'll upgrade. And one of the things we had a situation not too long ago, and so we use similar language to what you did ish, or at least it prompted me that said, we do the right thing even when no one's watching. And it reminds me of what you said about, balancing the right decisions with profits, essentially, that wins. But I was curious based on the Japanese heritage, I was making some notes as you were talking. The one I was looking for, like, where's it different? Where would this feel different than a North American or European company, I should say, sorry. And so I want you to answer that question is if you're in that company, how does it feel different? Because the word that stuck out to me as you talk was harmony. I don't hear that a lot. I know you had said, look, that is kind of our, maybe, it could mean respect. You talked about that, but right. Harmony is different. You don't hear about harmony in company values. Is there a difference there, the way that harmony is brought to life in the company if you were an employee there on a day-to-day basis? And how does it feel? How would it feel different from how does the Japanese heritage make it different from a North American company? What would it feel like day to day if I worked at, I don't know, Sony, and then I moved to Hitachi? What are the fundamental difference based on the Japanese heritage that you would think?
Yeah, the way I sometimes explain that the cultural difference that I've seen, Ron, in working in a Japanese company, having worked in American companies before, and indeed European, is some of the decision-making processes, because harmony talks about getting the opinions of people across the organization. It doesn't matter where you are, what level you are, but actually having an opportunity to say what you think, because of course it isn't always the noisy people that have the most to say in terms of value. It can sometimes be the quieter voices that have more to contribute. So when I used to work in American companies, far more our decision making was really sitting around a table, having a conversation with people around the table. And at the end of the conversation, the person at the end of the table, the boss, would say, okay, heard everything. This is what we're going to do. 90 days, to implement it. And then we'll come back and review it and see how we're doing. And then we decide kind of how to proceed from there. In a Japanese culture, you're much more likely to have a conversation like that. And then a little while later, you'll come back and have a similar conversation again. Because in that time, you've shared ideas, shared views, and then you've gone out and you've talked to other people to get a broader range of views through the organization. And then you come back and you share and you reach a consensus. And ultimately, obviously, somebody makes a decision if they have to.
Right.
But overall, it's much more about reaching decisions together. But once you've reached the decision, the key difference for me is you've got buy-in from people. So when you start, you haven't then got to go back and necessarily change direction, because you've got everybody bought into where you're going. So of course it's not perfect, it doesn't work every time, no system ever does, but it is much more of a system, an approach where you try to get buy-in. So harmony doesn't mean being nice to people and let's all sort of just simply get on together for the sake of getting on together. It's more about saying, okay, I respect your view, I'll listen to your view, we'll take that into account. But then when we've got to the end of all of that, we then agree to move forward together. It doesn't matter if where we move is different from what we originally thought. The fact is, we've now as a team got our direction, let's get on with it together, and we make it happen together. So it's kind of just a different decision-making process.
Three things stuck out. One was patience, actually, right? We moved very quickly. I'm going to just say North America, okay, we're in this, and it's funny because the structure sometimes isn't helpful. What I mean by that is you can enter a meeting and say the outcome is to make a decision today, but then you're forcing this thing to decide. It sounds like you guys have found some harmony. I'm going to use the word harmony to say, no, let's have a discussion. Let's spend fine. We're here for an hour. Let's see how far we get. And then let's take these ideas, these concepts, go have discussions with whoever, different stakeholders. Let's come back. Let's see if we can find consensus. And certainly because we've had the time to do this, there's what I heard you say was we have stronger buy-in.
Right.
Am I getting it right?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good characterization of it, Ron. And of course, there are situations where you can't do that. You've got to make a quicker decision and you've got to move on. You can't take the pandemic as an example. When we had lockdowns, you couldn't sit around a table thinking about it for a while. You kind of had to act and say, okay, we're now going to change. We're going to work from home. We're going to do certain things differently. But if you have more time to get buy-in and consensus, then you typically have, in our experience, a stronger process to move it forward from that point. But I guess as organizations, we need to be flexible enough to do what's required in the situation that we're in. If you haven't got the luxury of time, then you need to move more quickly.
That's a great point. So yeah, right. Some decisions, you're under the pressure cooker, you need to move. You don't have that luxury. So, but let's put those aside. Those are the common sense ones. It's interesting because I'm going back to a situation. We were just building out our company KPIs, our key performance indicators. And we were frustrated with each other. We couldn't, it was like we were trying to get these baked in one meeting and we just couldn't get there. And then it was a second meeting. We couldn't get there in the second meeting. And, as you were talking, I was reflecting on this. I think it was really helpful that we took more time because even for myself, it got easier as I went back and it was like looking at a puzzle and say, well, of course that piece goes in the corner, right? Your third time looking at the puzzle. what do you think we can do better as leaders to make that happen? Like, is it as easy as just communicating and say, hey, we don't have a pressure cooker. Let's not try to get this baked in today. It's okay. We're giving everyone permission that let's advance it as much as we can and then pause. What should we do to be more like that Japanese structure? I love it. How do we embrace that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and of course, trying to combine the two cultures could give you a great outcome if you can find the right way through it. I think it's probably around expectations, to be honest. To say, look, we want to hear your views, guys. Say what you think, and one of the frustrations of sitting around that table and having the conversation, saying we want a decision today, is does everybody get a chance to say what they really think and what they really feel? Or if their boss is sitting there, do they think, I can't really say that because I disagree with my boss and they've just said something, so I can't say something else? So
Right.
it is giving that permission and giving a little more time potentially to say, okay, go get used to it, because isn't it always easier to create change if people have more time to think about it and say, okay, I've become more used to the idea, and gradually you get things to move in any context, not just in the work context. And so taking that time to say, okay, we'll come back and talk about it again. Also, getting views from outside. Say, okay,
Right.
these are our views, but let's ask somebody else. What do they think? Go and ask some of our staff. Go and ask some of our other stakeholders. Go and ask our customers. What do they think is important?
Yeah, you think that logically. So let's assume that you have, people feel comfortable enough to have the conversations. So they're going to have healthy debate. But then the second piece of what you're saying, of course, logically, you think you 10x a decision, because if there was 10 people in the room that then talked to 2 or 3 or more, other individuals, customers, key stakeholders, of course, they're going to come back with something different, right? And so I love that. I think that. I think as I look in the mirror, we need to be more thoughtful and not frustrated. Like, we need another meeting. We didn't get it today. I think we just have to be a little more kind and patient with the conversation, to know that that's the right process. If you're not under the pressure cooker, to take a little more time, I think it makes perfect sense. I think that should be adopted. I think that's wonderful. Anything else that stands out that you think, yeah, this is a little different? That was great.
I think that the focus on respect for the individual and just the difference, really, and accepting difference, and encouraging that those sort of different views, because wherever we come from, we don't necessarily have the right answer. So it is that encouragement, if you like, of different people to contribute. Rather than necessarily just the people that have the strongest views or the strongest personalities.
And Stephen, how do you bring it out? So is there a process, or is it just a cultural thing that they would speak up because they feel comfortable, because they're in the Japanese culture? Like how do you bring that out of someone? Because I'm still going to assume that if I join the company today, there's a process to make me feel comfortable to grab my view. Otherwise I might not say anything.
Yeah, because you talk outside the meeting as well as inside the meeting, so you talk in a safer context. I think that's the key thing. If you're forcing to make yourselves to make a decision in a meeting, inevitably you can only make it with the people there based on what they say. So I think it's just having permission to say, okay, we'll talk outside the meeting too, and get other views outside the meeting as well as within it. And it's just taking that time over it, rather than saying we've got to be time limited in what we do.
Got it. And so let's talk. We're now in. Now I was up in the middle of the night last night, so I'm just trying to think of I don't even know the actual date today, but I assume we're in November. It's hard with 3 kids. So tell me about how the company's changed, during the pandemic. What did it look like before, and what's it look like now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really fundamental time of change for all of us, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, because of the pandemic and the effect it's had on lives, globally, Ron. But I think from our point of view, within Hitachi Europe, and others had similar experience, we were kind of recognizing there was a pandemic coming. We'd have to think about working remotely, because we recognize the need to kind of keep people safe. And so we prepared to go and have a trial day working remotely. And then the announcement of lockdown came, and we went back to the office a year and a half later. So, we went from a culture which really said you'd be in the office pretty much all the time, to a culture where you weren't in the office at all. And then we obviously we've emerged from that.
Sorry, Stephen, quick question.
Cool.
Sorry to interrupt. What did you see from a productivity standpoint? High level. Was it better, worse, same? What did it look like?
Pretty much the same. Yeah, the same.
The same. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, sure. And on that, I think part of that was because a lot of what we do is interacting with colleagues around the world. And in fact, strangely enough, I see more of my colleagues around the world now than I did before the pandemic, because we've now got Teams and we've got Zoom and we've got the other tools, and I see them on a video screen, on my PC screen every day.
Right.
Before that, you may have a call or a video conference, which was kind of all had to be set up with equipment and everything else.
Or you'd have to travel.
Right? Yeah. And now we talk all the time, and we've become, as a world, I think as a business community, not just in my company, very good at it, because it's kind of how we do business now. So we went from being in the office to not being in the office, and now emerging from that, trying to work out what is the right balance between being in the office and not being in the office, and how do we capture the best of what we had before, combine it with the best of what we've learned to create something better for the future. I mean, I think for me, that is a real challenge that we all face right now. And
what do you think? What do you think the answer to that is? Or
I wish I knew. I'd be writing books. Yeah. I think, to be honest with you, I think we're still learning.
Right.
And I know some companies have come out and said, this is our model for the future, kind of, this is what you need to do. Personally, I think that we are still learning what is the right balance between those, what we had and where we want to be. And I kind of think about it sometimes and think, you know what, if as a business community 3 years ago, we had all got together and said, let's change our business model. So we ask everybody to work at home 2 days a week, and everybody come in the office 3 days a week, and get a bit of balance for everybody. Of course, it could never have happened. But if we'd have done that, I imagine most people across most organizations would say, that's great. I get 2 days at home every week, 3 days in the office, brilliant. Now we're coming at it a different way, of course. We're coming at it where people have been at home almost all the time. And then we're saying, we want you back in the office day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week.
You're breaking a new habit now. Now you have to break a new habit.
Yeah. We went from one way of working to a completely new habit overnight. And so it shows, of course, you can only start from where people are, not where you'd like them to be. And people are in a situation globally where they've been used to working flexibly, remotely, with all the benefit that brings. And during the pandemic, when I was talking to some people around kind of what the challenges we were facing, I kind of characterized it as what I called FOMO versus photo. FOMO was fear of missing out, compared to photo, fear of the office, FOTO.
Cool.
Right? Yeah. So what we wanted to try and do as we got back into the office was to ensure that we minimize fear of the office. And of course, it isn't just about fear, it's about the inconvenience of commuting and all those things now. But also the fear of missing out needed to be stronger. So how can we make the office look attractive, a place you want to be to connect with people? And getting back to the office, we talked about and communicated how we needed to focus on purpose, because actually getting into an office, getting back out of your home office where people have become very comfortable and familiar with working and productive, recognizing there are clear purposes to being together again, and it's maximizing those. And some of those are more obvious than others. So if you have to meet a customer, you potentially need to be in the same place as them. If you need to welcome somebody new to your team and help them train, you need to be in the same place as them. But others, team meetings, training, team briefings, one-to-one, performance review sessions or whatever. There's a whole range of reasons why you may want to be in the same place. But a lot of it's less tangible. It's being at the coffee machine, chatting to somebody, having conversation, sharing information.
Yeah, look, I agree. And look, this comes up on the podcast quite a bit. I still feel the same way that I have, which is we're back to change management, right?
Yeah.
You glazed on that, which is you have to change. I have a new behavior. I'm comfortable in my home. I've got my sweatpants on, and I can go get a piece of toast and take a break and use my toilet, whatever I want, And to get me out of this change, I think there's two things. I think people are moving too quickly, large corps, and I don't disagree on the strategy, but as I watch objectively, they're moving too quickly to you should come back because this is important to the company versus, hey, Stephen, let's talk about you. Let's talk about you as an individual, how this might benefit you. I just think that message is still missing because it does need to happen one-on-one. And I think very quickly there's some logic. I think that, people that are 45 plus recognize that they are missing a sense of belonging. And so they're running into a little bit of burnout. Younger people don't realize that. They don't know why they're burning out. And it is a lack of human connectivity. I see it. I think so. So, and then the other thing is for the younger groups, but the skill building you can't get. I think I would argue it would be hard to become a really strong leader over Zoom. I just think it would be really hard. It's going to be 10 times the work. So then your colleague beats you for the promotion because, and so I don't know. What are your thoughts? Are we missing the slow play back to having patience of the individual conversations? Because the blanket never works. The blanket of, you should come back for this reason. Well, it doesn't work for everybody. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you that one person's purpose and reason is different from another. Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine outside the company a while ago, and I was talking about this moving back to the office on a purpose-based kind of basis. And I talked through the purposes that I'd seen, and he said, but none of those apply to me, Steve.
There you go.
So what's my purpose then? And that's a great question. Thankfully, it doesn't work for Hitachi, but it's in a different sector. But it is a key question to recognise the need to motivate people to come back. But I think there are some situations where you need people together. I think collaboration and innovation are much stronger if you're in the same place, or team
Agreed.
building, or because I know some have had different experiences, but I've never really had a good hybrid meeting where you have some people sitting at home, some people in the office. You're sitting at home, right? You've got your video screen, your computer screen, and you've got at the office is one little box, and everybody in it is like, it's so small, you can't see anybody. You can't really be part of it in the same way. So there are times where you want to be together in the same place, and that gives you value.
But let's go to that conversation because I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of companies, and I don't disagree. I agree. Logically, you're going to get better collaboration. But let's go back to what's in it for me. I'm in this little box because I do think I agree with your friend. I just think that as humans, we're kind of like, no, I like working from home. My productivity is the same. What do you need from me? And what's in it for me? And so, but I do think there's some there. Like for instance, that conversation. If this was a meeting that I was managing and you were in the small box, I could see myself following up to say, hey, I felt that because you weren't at the office and you were on Zoom for that meeting, Stephen, your voice wasn't really heard. I felt you were a little quieter, and I'd love to hear more of you. And I think your voice will be heard more coming to the office. Like, I need to kind of scratch your ego a little bit here. I just think that, I just think as companies, we need to be more patient and thoughtful about the change that we're requesting, because the message always comes back to collectively it's better for the company, it's better. There is a lot of that, I believe.
Yeah, sure. And I think you have to find the right balance between the need of the company and the need of the staff, of course. Yeah. And recognizing that you're going to take account of both of those. I mean, you talked about kind of maybe those further on in their career, they maybe got a comfortable house with plenty of space, family around, and maybe a longer commute, and they built their social capital. So why do they need to be in the office? But of course, younger people might be at an earlier stage of their career. They may actually value being in the office, learning from those other people. So you've got to be there together to make that happen. So you've got to be careful also, I think, which group you listen to, but recognize that needs are different in emerging from this.
Absolutely. We had a senior HR leader from Uber and asked him the question, because Elon Musk's come out and said, get back to the office. And actually, he said something different. He said, we believe that depending on your role, and I didn't dive too deep into that part of the discussion, but what he was really saying was, look, if you're a coder and you're just coding away, do it from your basement, no problem. You're not collaborating on the code or whatever. Like, if you're an accountant, you're just doing the payables and you're doing data entry. Do you really need to be into the office, or are you more productive? You get an extra, hour and a half of work in the morning and at night. I don't know. I assume those people could be more productive. So, I do think there's some logic saying, well, what are you doing exactly? Right.
Sure.
A leader, you're not going to be as effective on Zoom. You're just not. I don't believe.
No, I agree with you. No, I agree. And yeah, I think sometimes the presence can drive purpose as well as purpose driving presence,
Right.
actually, Ron, because if you are in the office, if you are in the same place, you can and have conversations you weren't expecting. You can bump into people you haven't seen for a while and share information or whatever. That's partly being human, I think. I've had a few meetings recently. We've had a few in-person meetings for various topics, and it's been great being in a room full of people again. It's just
I
been
agree.
fantastic because
No, I
you
agree.
chat before you start, you chat over a coffee as well. You can talk over a dinner in the evening or whatever it is, but it's just getting a chance to connect again, because you can't have those conversations on Teams or on Zoom or whatever. You have the meeting, it finishes at the top of the hour, and then you go to the next meeting, and then the next one,
Right.
because that's kind of how it works. You lose that human touch, I think.
Absolutely. I think two things. One, we were, I'll call it unorthodox before the pandemic. So it was, work from home, work from wherever you want. But people were coming into the office, and then the new habit became of no one coming. Actually, that was quite different for me. So then, exactly to your point, those small conversations weren't happening, which the underlying outcome of that is relationship and trust building. That just doesn't happen then, because you don't really build relationships in that meeting. We did our business and move on. I'm not really building trust here until trust comes from that water cooler. Hey, David, how was your weekend? Not good. I've got this dog, my dog's sick, and we can't figure it out. And I say, oh, my aunt's a vet. Let me connect you. Boom. We're starting to build trust. I've got your back. It's these little things that don't happen on these, on Zooms.
Right.
And so we doubled down on trust building, really said, let's actually put some intention around building relationships. And so one of our KPIs for everybody was picking 3 people that you didn't have strong relationships with and doing things with them. Go for a coffee, go for a walk. And I'll tell you, that really started, you could feel the stickiness coming back. It was really nice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's about being human. And let's say those are the human connections which are great, and which we've lost through the pandemic. But back to your point about leaders and how we work. One interesting thing I've heard from leaders is when they go to the office, they say, I get so much less done. And what they mean is they can't do meeting after meeting on Zoom or whatever. They can't kind of get into their emails because people keep coming to talk to them, which of course is the whole purpose of being there. You want that to happen. So the days I go to the office, I don't have it full of other meetings, because I want to be able to talk to people. I want to be available for them to come and look around the door and say, Steve, can we have a chat? Because you can't easily do that when you're on Zoom or Teams.
You know what? That's a great strategy, Stephen, is don't go to the office when you have I'm not saying don't, but I love the strategy of not going maybe when you have when you've got meetings booked all day, because then you're back to the I'll call it the methodology that we were all trained for before, which is don't bug me, don't that, do you got a minute? That was really disruptive. Don't do that. Now we need more of the do you have a minute, right? Like that's what we need that. So I love that. So look, as we wrap, what else is going on? What's next? What is a big mountain that Hitachi's got to climb over? And what are the things you're thinking about?
Yeah, well, of course, there's always another challenge, and we've been globalizing over my 14 years here. When we started, and when I started, one of the big challenges was to get more than 50% of our business in terms of revenue and people outside Japan. That's happened. We now got almost 60% of our people outside Japan, which is fantastic. But that brings whole new opportunities to develop the community of HR leadership, to look at what we can do together, what we can share, and also continue to build that platform of HR systems, using the same grading surveys, having a vacancy database, so that we get out there to the world and say we are Hitachi. You mentioned at the beginning, kind of how people think of Hitachi, but say Hitachi is everywhere in around us, but people don't know that, and the way we communicate, doing that together, is far stronger than by division and so on. So we have an Hitachi University now for online learning. So we've had so much change around globalizing and standardizing the way that we support HR and deliver HR. So that's a focus still. Talent management is a key area for us as well. How do we continue to attract, develop, and also move people around in a complex organization where you've got people in different countries, in different businesses? And that's but you have a lot of opportunities, but we can't always connect people with opportunity. And how do we do that well? And the whole diversity and inclusion equity agenda too. So, the challenge never stops, and that's the great thing about working for a company like this.
Did you have the same workforce challenges in Japan as North America had, and do you continue to have those challenges trying to get employees?
Yeah, it varies by country, but typically, my focus is mainly on Europe, and we see that issue across the piece here. Yeah, the availability of talent continues to be a challenge for us.
I'm curious, where's it least challenging? Where is it kind of like, look, we don't have the challenges in this country? Where is it least challenging from your perspective?
I haven't got any of those. No, it's the case to varying extents everywhere. Yeah, I mean, there's no situations where it isn't the case for various reasons. Obviously, not least because of the pandemic and all that's done to workforces. But that's a whole other discussion, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, where I was going with that was if there was like, wow, in the Netherlands we don't have it. Well, then why? What's going on there? Like, I'm just more curious if there's something that we're missing. That a country's doing, or I don't know, was there an underlying fundamental thing that was different that made it so someone didn't have that challenge? Well, that's great. Well, look, Stephen, I really enjoyed the discussion. Thanks so much for dropping in, joining us today. You've been a fantastic guest. I've got a full page of notes and things to think about, and I love. I just love that decision-making piece. I'm certainly going to take that back. I feel like we forced it before, and it happened naturally, and we can soften it on decisions that don't have a pressure cooker. So thanks for sharing that.
Great. No, thank you, Ron. It's been a pleasure.
For more information about Stephen, please follow him on LinkedIn. To learn more about our books or our Scaling Culture Masterclass on how to build and sustain a resilient, high-performing team, please go to scalingculture.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a comment and share the podcast with one of your friends or colleagues. We'll be back soon with another incredible guest.